Hi, welcome to another episode of Webcam Sessions. This week starts a 3-week series where we're going to talk about practice routines and how to kind of craft one for yourself. This week we're going to talk just a little bit about practice routines in general, and I've got a fun analogy I like to make with them. Next week we'll work on kind of an example of a more beginner's practice routine for someone that's just starting out, and then the week after we'll do an episode on a more advanced practice routine for when you're trying to take those next steps as a player. But today what I want to talk about is an analogy that I really like when it comes to practicing. And you can think of practicing a lot like eating a meal or making a meal or food in general, right? Everyone's got to eat. And that's just like if you want to improve on the ukulele, you got to practice, right? But everybody is in the mood for different things. Everybody likes different things. And that's very, very much the same when it comes to practicing the ukulele. You know, for instance, I love a good steak, but I'm not going to serve a steak to a vegetarian, just like somebody who maybe loves strumming but doesn't like fingerpicking at all. Well, they don't need to introduce fingerpicking into their practice to continually get better at strumming, right? So it's important to craft your practice routine around what you are in the mood for, right? What you're wanting, and to cut out the things that aren't required. You can really take this analogy far, talking about what sort of things need to be in a good meal, right? Obviously, ice cream for a meal isn't a really valid option, even though we all want it to be. Much in the same way that just playing, the same 3 chords over and over don't make a good practice routine. You need to have a more even spread of different things. With a meal, you could think of it as like you need some sort of protein and some sort of starch, and you got to make sure you're checking the boxes for the different vitamins and everything else that make up a great meal. Practice is the same way. And so to drop the food analogy a little bit, what a good practice routine needs to have is it needs to have things that challenge your fretting hand, things that challenge your playing hand, and things that challenge you mentally, right? So we'll start here with playing hand. So if you're a lefty, that'll be fretting hand. If you're a lefty, that'll be your right hand. If you're a righty, that'll be your left hand, the one that does the fretting on the ukulele. What you want to make sure you're introducing in any practice routine with fretting is that you're reinforcing good habits and introducing new techniques. So for instance, if you're someone who is just getting comfortable with the first 3 chords, like a C, F, and G7, reinforcing those again and again and again is a really good idea in your practice routine. But to make strides in your playing, it's going to be important to introduce new concepts, such as bar chords, for instance, right? For more advanced players, that might be some sort of finger-picking, song that you like to play. You just practice the left hand fretting, making sure your fingers are getting into position on time, right? It's got to have some sort of fretting hand concept that's used. To go back to the food for just a moment, that's sort of like I need a protein, so I'm going to have a steak, or I need the protein, so I'm going to have some sort of bean salad, right? Those are very different things, just like there are very different ways to work the fretting hand. You just need to make sure that one aspect of your meal or your practice routine is covering that. Flip it on the other side, your playing hand, the one that strums or picks, you need to make sure that you're using techniques that you can reinforce good habits and introduce new ones as well. So, for instance, I just mentioned that finger picking exercise for the fretting hand, right? Well, that might be also a playing hand exercise too, to reinforce some sort of finger picking technique and getting your fingers into position to work, right? Just like a bean salad might fit the role of a good side and your protein, right? When you're building a meal, you can have things that sort of fulfill multiple roles, and when you're practicing and building a good practice routine, you can have that as well. So kind of again, the analogy you can take as far as you want. I'm going to kind of drop it here, though. I'm getting too hungry to keep talking about food. But essentially, we're trying to craft something that, completes our meal. I just said I'd drop it and I didn't, but complete our practice routine to be very well balanced. Right, so we got fretting habits is something with the left hand, right? Playing habits with our playing hand in terms of finger picking or strumming or whatever else. And then the mental aspect is a little bit more broad. Mental aspect is knowing what chords you're playing, for instance, memorizing which chords you're learning. The names of them are so important, right? It's also memorizing things like the fretboard, knowing how to traverse it quickly in terms of knowing where the numbers are and potentially even knowing where those notes are as well. It's also understanding elements of music theory so that you can talk to and relate to other musicians. But music theory is one of those things that, knowing a little bit I think is good for everybody. But if it's something you're really not that into, it's not critical to spend a lot of time on it. Just like with the food, if you don't like that type of food, don't worry about eating it a lot. Just eat something else that gives you that same role. And in this case, the mental aspect could be more of looking at complicated tabs and being able to traverse the fretboard, knowing where the numbers are, not worrying as much about the notes. And on the flip side, if you really want to know what those notes names are, spend more time on that. It's okay to kind of spread it to a direction that you are going to get the most out of. And so, again, this video is meant to be more of an introduction to building a practice routine. We're not really covering much in the way of building one right now. That's what we'll be doing in the next couple weeks. But this week, I want you to start to think about what sort of things you want on your plate of food in a practice sense, right? What are you hoping to get out of it? Are you trying to be more of a fingerstyle player? If so, you're going to want to work more on things that will utilize finger picking, and I'll introduce some exercises next week for that as well. Are you somebody who wants to sing and strum and get better at working on different patterns to be able to, take your playing to the next level with your strum along groups or whatever else? Then that's sort of the element that you want to focus on. Or are you somebody who wants to be well-rounded and do a little bit of everything? That's okay too. That's just that plate of food that's got a little bit of everything, right? And so everyone's a little bit different with it. So again, next week we'll start on our first sort of example practice routine and go from there. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. And also, I want you to leave your ideal meal of what you'd like to be playing on the ukulele, and I'll take some of these into consideration as I'm making these example practice routines. Are you somebody who really wants to do lots of classical style finger picking? Are you somebody who's more interested in playing instrumental chord melodies? Are you into jazz and want to play to support a vocalist? Do you want to work on some country western bluegrass and strum along and sing along? What are your interests? It'll help me sort of craft a plate for the next couple weeks to show examples. So I hope this has been somewhat helpful. I'll see you guys next week, and really looking forward to it. And have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.